Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We got so many requests to dig into what's really going on at Yosemite, and, well, let's just say the picture's not as pretty as those postcard views you see.
Yeah, we're going way beyond those glossy travel articles.
Yeah, exactly. We've got some sources here that paint a pretty different picture, kind of like, what's lurking beneath the surface of this iconic national park.
Right, and our main source is an investigative piece, pretty in-depth, from Investor. The title is, well, pretty telling: Yosemite National Park, a thrilling tale of neglect amid commercialization.
Oh, okay. So right off the bat, neglect and commercialization, not exactly what you think of when you think of Yosemite, right?
No, not really. We'll be bringing in some additional research, too, just to, get a more complete picture.
Yeah, good. So the article starts with this really powerful story about a Yosemite worker. Got really sick because of, get this, the conditions in her employee housing.
Yeah, not just like a minor inconvenience.
No, we're talking she was living in a tent infested with rodents.
And this is more than just, one bad experience. It speaks to a bigger issue, this whole struggle to get people to work and stay working in these remote places with a high cost of living, too.
Right. It's expensive to live there.
Yeah.
So understaffing could be forcing the park to use, well, these less than ideal housing options.
And then, yeah, that creates a cycle, doesn't it? Poor working conditions, difficulty attracting and retaining staff.
Ugh, yeah, it's a scary cycle. Not just unfair to the workers, but it makes you think, right, if they can't keep basic staff, what about the overall maintenance of the park? What about safety?
Right. And speaking of safety, the article highlights a few incidents, pretty worrying ones, at some of the Yosemite hotels.
Oh, okay, yeah, what happened?
So in 2024, there was a ceiling collapse at the Ahwahnee Hotel. People got injured.
Oh, wow, the Ahwahnee. You'd think they'd keep that place in tip-top shape, right?
Yeah. You would. It's a landmark. But then there was a railing collapse at another hotel, also resulting in injuries.
So two separate incidents.
Yeah, and what's even more concerning is that neither incident was reported to the National Park Service.
Hold on, that's like hiding serious safety issues.
Mhm.
Makes you wonder what else they're not being transparent about.
Exactly. It raises questions about accountability, who's really responsible for visitor and worker safety, and are they actually doing enough? And then, of course, there's the environmental side of it.
Oh, right, yeah, the article talks about this massive glycol spill, right? 500 gallons near the Merced River.
Yep, and the company responsible didn't even report it.
Wow. That's not a small whoopsie. That's a huge disregard for the environment.
Right, and this isn't just any river. The Merced River it's vital to Yosemite's whole ecosystem, supports wildlife, provides drinking water for communities downstream.
The lifeblood of the park, basically.
Exactly. And glycol, well, that's the main stuff in antifreeze. It's incredibly toxic to wildlife, and, it can easily contaminate groundwater.
So this one incident shows just how much damage can happen when environmental rules are ignored.
It's a big red flag for sure.
Yeah. And this one company seems to be at the center of a lot of these issues. Aramark. They're not just in Yosemite either. They have a presence in, well, quite a few national parks.
You're right. They're a huge corporation, multi-billion dollars, and they have contracts to run a whole bunch of services in different parks.
Oh, wow. Like what?
In Yosemite, just in Yosemite, they handle everything from lodging to restaurants, gift shops, even the ski resort.
It's like a mini city,
Yeah.
right, inside the park. So this isn't just like one isolated bad apple then. This company has a huge impact on visitors, on workers, even on the environment.
Yeah, huge impact.
But how did this happen? How did this one company end up with so much control over our national parks?
Well, you got to look back at the history of concessions in national parks. It's a system that evolved over time. The original idea was that private businesses would handle some services for visitors, in these remote spots, while the Park Service focused on, conservation.
Makes sense, like a partnership, division of labor.
Yeah, exactly. But somewhere along the way, things got out of whack.
Right, like the balance shifted.
Yeah. The laws that govern these contracts, well, they actually create a conflict of interest. They encourage these companies, like Aramark, to prioritize profits. And they limit the Park Service's ability to, well, make sure everyone's playing by the rules.
So it's like setting them up to fail almost, huh?
In a way, yeah. It prioritizes profit over everything else, The well-being of the park, the workers, the visitors.
Ugh, it's disheartening. So are you saying this is happening everywhere, that Yosemite is just, the tip of the iceberg?
It's a bigger issue, for sure. The article mentions Crater Lake National Park.
Yeah.
Aramark was managing things there, and it was a disaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sewage spills, visitor injuries, overall neglect so bad that in 2023 they lost the contract after a federal review.
Wow, that's got to be significant losing a contract like that. But if their track record is so bad, why are they still in Yosemite? Is there just no competition?
Well, that's part of the problem. It turns out there are only like three major companies that dominate these concessions: Aramark, Xanterra, and Delaware North.
Three. So not a lot of options.
Not really. This lack of competition means they can kind of do whatever they want. There's no real pressure to improve or even meet basic standards.
Yeah, like they're too big to fail, huh?
Kinda, yeah. And ultimately, who suffers? The parks, the workers, and us, the visitors.
So it's pretty bleak, right? But the article mentioned something about pushback, like the Park Service stepping up, even shutting down the Wawona Hotel.
Yeah, people are starting to notice, and the Park Service is starting to take action. The
Ugh.
Wawona Hotel being closed indefinitely, that's a big sign that things are changing.
It's a huge step. But what about Aramark? Have they said anything? Are they trying to fix things?
Well, they've announced some initiatives: repairs, replacing some executives, and rehiring staff.
Okay, so at least they're acknowledging the problem.
Yeah, but many people think it's not enough, like a PR stunt, not real change.
So it's a start, I guess, but maybe not the solution.
Right. It all comes back to this fundamental tension, privatization versus preservation in our parks, who benefits and who's really being prioritized.
Yeah, who really benefits? It's a heavy question, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. We need to see the full picture before we even start thinking about solutions.
I agree.
Okay, so you mentioned some alternative models like Denali and Grand Teton. Those are doing things differently.
Yeah, they are. Let's explore those next. Maybe we can find some glimmers of hope in this whole, troubling story.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But there are parks that are trying different things, approaches that put the park first, not profit.
Oh, okay. I need some good news. Tell me about the parks that are getting it right. What can we learn from them? Well, it's not about being perfect, right? It's more about like constantly adapting and learning from, well, mistakes,
Yeah.
Let's look at Denali National Park. That's in Alaska. They've got a system that uses smaller, locally owned businesses, not the huge corporations.
Local businesses, huh? How does that even work?
So instead of one giant company running the show, Denali breaks things up. They have these smaller contracts, and they're with businesses from Alaska for like transportation, tours, some lodging and food even.
So it's more spread out with local expertise too. But
Yeah.
does that really make things better for the park and for the people visiting?
Seems like it, yeah. These smaller businesses, they care about Denali, their livelihoods, their reputations. It's all tied to the park doing well.
So they're invested, yeah.
Right. They end up operating more sustainably, more responsibly. They become like stewards of the land.
I like that. Yeah, it's like think globally, act locally. And I bet it creates a better connection between the park and, well, the community around it.
Definitely. There's this pride, this sense of ownership that you might not get with a big corporation just focused on the bottom line. And it's not just Denali. Grand Teton National Park has a pretty interesting model, too. They work with nonprofits.
Nonprofits. Okay, now that's different. How does that work in a national park?
They partner with groups like the Grand Teton National Park Foundation. They get funding, and that goes towards all sorts of things: conservation, education for visitors, even scientific research.
So it's less about like the day-to-day stuff, running hotels and things, more about supporting what the Park Service is already doing.
Yeah, exactly. Giving them extra resources, bringing in like specialized knowledge. It's a team effort, and it seems to be working pretty well.
Okay, I like these examples. They show that there are other ways to do things, ways that prioritize the park and the visitors. But I keep thinking about Yosemite. It seems like they're, well, stuck.
Yeah.
What can they do to get out of this mess?
Yosemite's tough, for sure. But there are things that could make a big difference. First, the National Park Service needs more power. Power to enforce the rules of these contracts. Right now, it's all about profit, and that has to change.
So change the rules of the game, so to speak. Give the Park Service more control. What else?
We need more competition, too. Break up those massive contracts, the ones that give one company too much power. Have smaller, more focused agreements.
Okay, so smaller contracts, more companies involved.
Right. That would mean better services, more innovation, and a focus on doing things sustainably.
Okay, I see, yeah. That would make everyone step up their game. But wouldn't that be a lot for the Park Service to manage, all those little contracts?
It would be more work, yeah. More oversight, definitely.
Yeah.
but I think the benefits outweigh the challenges. And some parks have already figured out ways to make it easier, like centralized systems for bidding so smaller companies can participate.
Oh, okay. So more competition, stricter enforcement. What's the third piece of this?
Don't forget about people power. Public pressure can really push things in the right direction. The more we talk about these issues, the more pressure there is on the Park Service and these companies to do better.
You're talking directly to the deep dive listeners here.
Yeah.
We can be those voices.
You got it. Call your representatives, share information, support those groups fighting for our parks, and be mindful of how you visit these places too.
Yeah, like you said earlier, conscious choices about where we spend our money.
Right. Our national parks belong to all of us, so we have a responsibility to protect them. We need to demand that they're managed the right way, putting preservation first, being sustainable, and taking care of the people who work and visit them.
I'm feeling a little more hopeful now. It's a lot to work through, but at least there are solutions, and there are people who really care about protecting these places.
That's what matters. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where people can enjoy these places without, destroying them in the process.
I like that, finding the sweet spot. It's a tough balance, but we have to get it right. We're talking about, some of the most amazing places on the planet. We have to preserve them for ourselves and for future generations.
As we wrap up this part, there's one more thing I want to say. It's easy to think about this as us versus them. Park service against the companies, locals against tourists.
Yeah, it can feel that way.
But really, we all want the same thing. We want to protect these parks.
It's about finding that common ground, right?
Yeah.
Building bridges, not walls, working together to find solutions that work for everyone.
That's where the real hope is. When we work together with a shared sense of responsibility, that's when we can make a difference.
I totally agree. It's about finding that passion, that love for these places. That's what brings us together.
Beautifully said. I think it's a perfect place to stop for now.
We've talked about a lot of big picture stuff, the challenges facing Yosemite and other parks too. But I kind of want to bring it back to you, the listener, like your own connection to this place.
Yeah, because it's not just some, policy debate. Yosemite means something to you. These problems, they affect how you experience this place that you clearly care about.
Right. And honestly, some of what we've learned might be, well, a little disheartening. Even maybe kind of makes you angry. It's one thing to read about these problems, but it's another to think about them happening in a place you love.
That makes sense. It's natural to feel that way. Frustration, disappointment, yeah, maybe even a sense of betrayal, when you see a place you love being treated poorly.
So what do we do with those feelings?
Yeah.
How do we go from anger to action, especially when these problems seem so, so huge?
Well, remember that you have a voice. And it matters. You're not powerless. There are things you can do to make a difference, both in how you visit Yosemite and how you advocate for change.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Shifting from powerless to empowered.
Yeah.
So what can people actually do? What actions will actually have an impact?
Well, let's start with your visits. You can choose to support businesses that are, doing things the right way. Look for certifications like Leave No Trace or B Corporation. Those show they're committed to the environment, to social responsibility.
So do your research, ask questions.
Yeah, be a conscious consumer. Spend your money where it aligns with your values.
Makes sense. Putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
But what about collective action? Going beyond just individual choices?
There are some great organizations out there, working to protect Yosemite and pushing for better park management. Groups like Yosemite Conservancy, the National Parks Conservation Association, even local ones like the Tuolumne River Trust.
And I'm sure those groups need support, right?
Yeah.
Volunteers, donations, people spreading the word.
Totally. And don't forget about contacting your elected officials. Let them know you care about Yosemite. Tell them your concerns. They need to hear from their constituents.
It's true. Sometimes it feels like those voices don't get heard, though.
That's why it's important to share your story, too. Tell people why you love Yosemite, why you're worried about its future. Talk to friends, post on social media, write a letter to the editor. Every voice adds up.
It's about getting people talking, building a movement. And it's about remembering that Yosemite is, it's more than just a pretty place for pictures, right?
Right. It's a whole ecosystem, a cultural landscape. It's a place that inspires people, gives them a chance to reconnect with nature. It deserves our respect and our actions.
So next time you're planning a trip to Yosemite, or even just thinking about it, take a moment. Think about what this place means to you, your favorite memories, what makes it special, and then ask yourself, what can I do to make sure it's still here for, for my kids, for their kids?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask, and it sums up what this whole deep dive is about. It's not about giving up, it's about, taking action. It's about seeing the problems, but also seeing the opportunities to make things better.
We've definitely gone through a lot today. It's been complex, sometimes frustrating, but I hope you're leaving with a sense of hope, like a feeling that you can do something.
That's the goal. And keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions. That's what makes, well, the world a more interesting place.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Yosemite. Don't forget, these parks, they belong to all of us. It's up to all of us to protect them.
Until next time, happy trails. And thanks for diving deep with us.